Hi everyone, welcome to Community Tutorials. This will be my first tutorial. As a matter of fact, it's the first one I've ever done for YouTube. In this tutorial, we're going to be covering how to do multiple monitors on a single PC when you're doing multiplayer, like co-op, for example. The reason why I'm doing this tutorial is I didn't really find a whole lot of information on how to do this. Especially for my uses, and I'm currently designing a arcade-based game, and I wanted to do like a head-to-head two-player on a single computer and make that into like an arcade system. So that's why I learned how to do this. So uh, this tutorial is going to assume that if you're following along, you're going to need a player character with or player with movement controls already set up. I've already gone ahead and done all of that. So I have the player here. Also have set up, the general generic map here to use and a player input manager, which I've set to Unity events, and I got my player there, and it's just set to spawn the player when they push a button on the controller. I do have two, PlayStation style USB wireless controllers set up on this system, so we'll be demonstrating the two-player system here. Alright, with that said, let's get started with setting this up. The first thing that we're going to do is we want to set up a system for Unity to have access to our other monitors, not just the first one. So we're going to do a empty game object, and we're going to call that screen activation. And we're going to create that out. Once it's loaded, we're open it up in Visual Studio. Alright. The first thing we need to do is make sure that this is the only one of these, and that it is persistent throughout the different scenes. So let's start on that. The way to do that is make game object array called objects, and create that from any game object with the tag that we're going to put on this object. Let's call that screen activation. Like so. And then when this loads, we're going to check objects.length, and if it's greater than 1, that means there's more than one of these, and we don't want that, so we destroy it. Like that. And then after that's done, if this is the only one, then we do a do not destroy on load, which will cause it to carry over from one scene to the next, which is what we want. And there's that. We can actually delete our update method. Here in start, we're actually going to do a for each loop. And what we're going to do is we're going to loop through the active or the displays that are connected to the computer. And we find those under display dot displays. Quite convenient naming. And then for each display, we're going to activate it and give it its width and height. Using system width and system height, and then a 60 for the refresh rate, and these are all here. And that is it for the display part. So what this is doing is essentially just activating any displays that are connected to the computer when this scene opens up, so that we can use them further. And then I'm going to save this. And then don't forget to add that tag, and we call it screen activation, like that. And then on the screen activation, we make sure we tag it so we can find it later in there. And that part is all done, just like that. And then what we want to do is, when each of the players comes into the game, we want to assign them with their own screen. And since I'm only doing 2-player, I only need to do that on player number 2. So in my player, I'm going to, you could add this to your player movement script or whatever, but for this purpose, I'm actually gonna add a whole script. So I call this assign monitor. Open this one up. And this is actually quite easy as well. First of all, we're going to be using Unity Engine dot input system. And what we're going to do is actually take these out. We're going to do an awake. And in the awake, we are going to check to see which player it is. And this is by getting the player input dot player index, and if that is equal to 1, which is player 2, player 1 being 0 on the index and player 2 being 1 on the index. So if this player is player 2, we are going to get their camera which will be in children, type camera, like that. And then we're going to set that player's camera, their target display, helps if you type it correctly. And that will also be 1, which is display number 2, same system as the index here. So your main display, display 1, is indexed as 0, and your second display is indexed as 1, and then so on. So we want player 2 to be assigned their camera to then display on screen 2. And that is in here. Under our player's camera, this display here, that's what we're changing. We're changing it to 2 when they are spawned in. And that's done here. So we're going to save this. And as I said, I already have the player set up and the player input manager set up. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and play and grab my first controller and display 1. And when I hit a button on this controller, I get spawned in and I'm moving around like so. So that's working. And then currently you can see that display 2, there's nothing, no cameras are rendering because player 2 is not in the game, so their camera is not being rendered to that screen yet. However, when I pick up the second controller and hit a button, there he is, his player 2 spawned in. And he's moving around, and of course, since this is still display 1, I'm still looking at him. But if I switch over to display 2, now that's his display. And this works at, just like you would expect it to after you build it out. You got monitor 1 is player 1 and monitor 2 is player 2. And that is the extent of this tutorial. If you liked it, please go ahead and give it a like, and if you'd like to, please subscribe. I'll be doing more tutorials. I don't know what type of scheduling system I'll have yet to do more of these, but I definitely plan on doing more. One of them I have an idea for doing is how to play MP3s in a Windows-based PC, and that's not natively supported by Unity. I've seen a lot of tutorials with N-Audio and whatnot, and that is actually a very complex way of doing it. I've discovered a very bare bones system on how to do that, and I've been thinking about making a tutorial for that. I've never seen any tutorial that covers how I do it. So if you're interested in seeing that tutorial, please leave a comment and let me know. That's all for this one. Thank you. Have a good day.